It was said that a bank robbery was the theft of the century. The mastermind's cunning scheme to breach an impenetrable vault leaves the investigators stunned. The story's events transpired at the Saucity General Bank, one of France's most renowned financial institutions, with locations across the country. The bank is situated in Nice, a city on the French Riviera, which is the Mediterranean Sea's southeast coast. The majority of people used to store their priceless belongings, such as cash, jewelry, gold, and other items, at this bank back then. The bank accepted deposits of all kinds and stored them in safe boxes inside the vault. Because the bank possessed one of the strongest and largest vaults in all of France, the clients felt extremely secure about the safety of their belongings. But nothing like what happened on Monday, July 19, 1976, has ever happened before. The day began as all other days do. As every other cop got into their seats, the day began as usual. Nothing out of the ordinary suggested that anything out of the ordinary was about to happen. Up until the director of the bank and a few other personnel attempted to access the vault to release funds for customer transactions, everything was okay. The inner door persisted, and they were unable to open it, but the main vault door opened normally. Since it wasn't their first time, they maintained their composure. There has been a previously jammed door. Since the steel door was over 20 tons in weight and was 75 years old, dealing with issues of this nature was not unusual. The issue, though, was that a large number of patrons were gathered in front of the bank, waiting for the cops to unlock the entrance so they could conduct business. The bank director got in touch with the vault's manufacturer and maintenance company. A few minutes later, a company representative showed up to work on the lock mechanism and repeatedly unlocked the door while attempting to determine the cause of the jam. The specialist eventually found that the lock was functioning properly. Even so, there were no signs that the door had been forced, and it remained stuck. The specialist came with all the necessary equipment and kept attempting to figure out why the door was stuck. However, disgruntled clients began to swarm the bank at the same moment, growing angrier. They started to get anxious. Nobody was explaining to them why they had to wait. They just wanted their money and to return to their morals. There was an air of anxiety. Despite the help of additional staff dispatched by the maker's company, the expert attempts to solve the mechanism's puzzle came up empty. Not even knowing what was going on was possible for them. It appeared intricate and perplexing. Unless the door had been closed from the other side, which is not possible, they had no explanation. If there is just one entrance leading into and out of the vault, how could it be closed from the inside? That was completely crazy. It was decided to smash through the side of the vault door before midday. Their goal was to determine the cause of the blocked door. Finally, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a tiny opening allowed them to look inside the vault. The laborers stated what was thought to be impossible. Someone had looted the bank. The bank director made contact with the police. The bank soon came under attack from police, including all of the notable officers in Nice, who were aware that they were about to look into one of the largest bank thefts in history. They widened the hole. These cops all entered. Along with the 400 safe boxes of valuables that were inside, the bank robbers made off with all of the money. Additionally, a large font phrase that read "without weapons, without violence, and without hate" was put on the wall. How the thieves entered and exited the vault is the question this raises. For the present detectives, that was very clear. The tools the robbers used to break into the vault were left in the hole that opened up to a tunnel that connected to the city's subterranean sewer system. Everything left behind served as proof that this was a sizable operation. In addition to over a half-mile of electrical line and ventilation equipment that allowed fresh air to enter the tunnel, 27 gas cylinders had previously been used to fuel blowtorches. They must have spent months organizing this enormous operation, which is why they deserve the prize they were given at the conclusion. Burglars had taken about $10 million worth of cash, jewelry, and precious metals. It was dubbed the heist of the century and the largest bank theft in global history, with headlines from most foreign media outlets. The bank promised a reward of $250,000 to anyone with information that resulted in the robbers' capture. Not only was it the largest bank heist ever, but it was also the largest probe. Prominent investigators were brought in from all over France, and they started questioning thousands of people, including bank workers and clients who claimed to have boxes in the safe. Interviews had also been conducted with laborers and nearby residents. Additionally, there was proof that the well-known sewer rats were accomplices in this heist. This gang primarily committed crimes via the sewer system. Following a protracted investigation, the detectives identified some suspects, and they were virtually certain that these people were sewer rats members. However, they believed that none of the suspects could organize this operation, so they decided to keep them under close observation because they were hunting the mastermind, the person who orchestrated this whole thing. The first few days of October provided a clue about the criminals when two men under surveillance attempted to sell gold ingots at a nearby bank. The employee of the bank discovered that the ingot serial numbers matched those that had been taken from the bank. After the bank employees alerted the police, they quickly arrested the two suspects. The police had clear evidence that those men were part of the gang and would become closer to other members if coerced into speaking and admitting who the mastermind of the operation was. The French police were told that they could even charge their relatives with crimes they don't even know about, that they could imprison any suspect, and that they may use any means necessary to force a confession, even if it's against the law. Following this, a name was revealed. One of the two males provided the police with the name of Albert, a photographer. He claimed to have planned this operation himself. The police quickly approached the photographer and informed him of everything they had. The man was astonished beyond belief. He informed them that he did not know of that. He did not fit the profile either, which made the police feel hopeless. He sounded innocent, for sure. Many people who knew him described him as a charming romantic who was above all faithful, especially to his wife, and when they were questioned about him, they said he led a quiet life as a photographer. The country lifestyle, away from the bustle of the city, was what the couple favored. Therefore, it seemed strange to the police that a simple man like him would plan to rob a bank. However, he had been placed under arrest. The individual persisted in asserting his innocence even though detectives were over-investigating him. Hour after hour had passed throughout the study. The photographer stayed composed despite the police's best efforts to get a confession using every tactic they knew, both legal and illicit. The police searched Albert and his wife's cottage while he was being questioned. The discovery of explosives and illegal firearms gave the authorities the upper hand during questioning. As we have stated, the police had no trouble abusing their power to obtain confessions. Because they are confident that Albert loves his wife too much to allow them to arrest her, they have threatened to accuse her of having firearms and send her to prison for a long time. Albert felt compelled to tell the authorities the truth at this point to save her wife. He acknowledged that he was the operation's mastermind and provided them with a thorough explanation of his planning. He claimed that when he learned that the vault lacked an alarm system from a neighbor who worked at the bank 2 years prior, the idea for the system occurred to him. Albert rented a safe box from the bank. To give the owners of safe boxes some privacy, the bank used to allow them access to the vault, unaccompanied. As they were packing their belongings into their boxes, he took his camera inside the vault and began taking detailed pictures and notes. He required a strategy that would let him remain inside the vault for an extended period without being detected to break all or most of the locks, as there were thousands of safe boxes there. After giving it some serious thought, he concluded that the underground sewer system was his greatest chance of entering the vault. Although there is a vast subterranean sewer system in Nice City, it is not located beneath the buildings. Therefore, Albert reasoned that he could dig a tunnel from the nearest point to enter the bank building. Naturally, achieving this is challenging. It required extensive searching and work. In an attempt to locate a route that led straight to the bank and to determine the best place to start digging, he decided to spend weeks crawling beneath the sewer system. This was just too hard. He could not stand the smell. The sewer system was too musty. He tried to fight the smell by smoking a Cuban cigar. It took him a while to realize that this objective was unattainable. He made things a lot simpler for himself by posing as a contractor and going to the city hall to obtain a map of the sewer system. At last, he located the sewer branch nearest the bank. He recognized the ideal site to begin excavating. A 30-foot tunnel needs to be excavated starting from the closest point to the vault. Although it's not a very far distance, the fact that the excavation was taking place beneath one of the main thoroughfares and would be audible from the street above made it challenging. Albert now had the plan, but he lacked the personnel and resources to carry it out. Consequently, he went to Marseille and met with the leaders of several gangs, notably the Sewer Rats gang. They became enthused about the plan and truly loved it. They gave him a large piece of the cake in exchange for their assistance. They would supply him with labor and all the tools needed to get the operation underway. First, Albert stationed a few men with radios in the digging zone so they could alert the others in case police arrived out of the blue. To be sure the procedure wouldn't go wrong, he took every safety measure. The digging itself was taxing since they had to utilize conventional tools to keep their noise levels down. In addition, the diggers found it extremely challenging because the area was small, warm, and inadequately ventilated. When one of the men became too sick to endure such conditions one day, Albert was forced to split the men up into teams. Every team would work for 10 minutes, then take 10 more minutes to rest. For emergencies, there was even a doctor on call. They brought a ventilation tube and a half-mile electrical line because they needed light and fresh air to continue working, and they used energy from a nearby garage to power ventilators and lights. The working conditions improved as a result. Albert tried his utmost to put the workers at ease because he thought that their comfort was crucial to the plan's success. They eventually made it to the wall of the vault in the first few days of July, 9 weeks later. Albert was unhappy, but everyone else was too. He was aware that there was still much work to be done. There was still a 12-inch wall of reinforced concrete they needed to breach. It wasn't hard, but to break through, they needed jackhammers and drills. Albert asked them to begin digging from above the digging zone because he was worried that their use of such equipment might be heard. His concerns turned out to be unfounded. He was utterly deaf to nothing. That evening, they managed to breach half of the vault wall, and they decided to breach the remaining portion the next time they went inside. The 17th of July was Saturday, D-Day. The reason they picked that day was that it was the first of the weekend. The bank would be closed, and they would have ample time to finish what they had begun. They entered the tunnel that evening and began excavating the remnants of the concrete wall. 6 inches of reinforced concrete remained for them to breach. It took Albert a lot longer than he had anticipated to drill. On Sunday morning, at 2 a.m, the rats managed to get into the vault. First on the list was welding the steel door to its frame. If someone tried to get into the vault area, Albert and his group would have time to flee. They subsequently started to open each safe box individually, and what they found shocked them. Gold, money, jewelry, everything they had ever dreamed of. They dined inside the vault, like kings on gold, plated items discovered in one of the safe boxes as a way to commemorate their victory. Armed messengers had arrived that evening to deposit money. It's a routine procedure. An armed van drove up, and the driver threw a suitcase full of cash through a small opening that led directly to the vault without having to unlock it. For them, that was a bonus, a gift from God. The sewer rats repeatedly broke the other safe boxes. Despite only being able to access 400 of the 4,000 boxes, they were inside the vault for about 27 hours. However, it was more than sufficient for them. At 5 o'clock on Monday morning, Albert announced that it was time to go. The bank would open in less than 4 hours. However, Albert used a paint spray before he left to write the well-known phrase on the wall without the use of weapons, bloodshed, or hatred. This comment infuriated the police because it described how the people who were cheering and laughing at the crime went around chatting to one another and used phrases like without weapons, without violence, without hate in place of saying hello and goodbye. Albert was eventually taken into custody along with the other members of the sewer rat gang. Then he listed everything we had already told the investigators and stated that he would be willing to assist in exchange for keeping his wife out of this. Albert was detained by the police until a definitive verdict was rendered against him. Albert used to see the judge in his office every Thursday during this time with his attorney. The judge sought to assess his readiness to cooperate and gauge his current state. This predicament persisted for a few weeks. Albert visited the judge in his office and spoke with him for 30 minutes. Since he was so cooperative, everyone anticipated that his sentence would be lowered. Albert made his normal trip to the judge's office for the final meeting before his trial. He continued to explain the robbery to the judge, showing him 3 pieces of paper with sketches of the mice's sewage system. He also described how he had planned the operation and the location and the digging. However, the judge was perplexed, so Albert volunteered to help. Albert quietly rose from his seat, moved behind the judge's chair, and started to explain things to the judge more clearly, taking advantage of the bewilderment on the judge's part. We did this and that after starting at this point. When the judge eventually came, he was examining the chart and paying close attention to what Albert had said. The judge and the attorney were left stunned and unable to process what had happened when he abruptly turned to face the window behind the judge's desk and leaped through it. Albert found it easier to jump on the roof of a car that was parked under the window because the judge's office was on the first floor. His friend was waiting for him on a motorcycle as soon as he leaped, and because Albert had vanished that day, the friend fled. During the investigation, he withheld information that would have enabled the police to locate both him and the pilfered goods. They did, however, claim that he gave the owner of the car whose roof he crashed into $600 in cash. Albert sent investigators provocative images and messages via newspapers, magazines, and other media throughout the remainder of his life. Regretfully, his devoted spouse chose not to accompany him on his journey of escape. She stayed in Nice and carried on with her nursing career. Ultimately, the mastermind of the largest heist of the century died of lung cancer in 1989. This marks the conclusion of our tale. Please remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon if you enjoyed it so that you may get updates on new videos.